Well, where would you like me to start?
Well, you came out of mama's vagina.
Shit's about to go down.
I'm feeling something in my spirit.
Chats Tatts with Aaron Della Vedova.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Chats and Tats with me, your host, Aaron Della Vedova. I have a really cool dude with me today. He's a lot of things, but first and foremost, most of you are going to know him as a professional skateboarder. His career is nothing short of iconic. Other things too, he's a father, he's a husband, he's a business owner. But I think you guys are all going to be really interested in hearing the story of where he came from and how he got to where he is today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my friend, Jamie Thomas.
Hello, how you doing? Thanks for having me, Aaron.
You're welcome, buddy. You're welcome. And I'll just start by saying this right out of the gates. I wasn't a huge skateboard fan. I skated when I was younger. I quit skateboarding because I had a tattoo and I didn't want to break my fingers. And then I got so engrossed in my own career as a tattoo artist, like I didn't pay attention to almost anything there's a lot of years where I wasn't a part of culture. But when I bring up your name, and I have several times because you've been here to get laser removal and now you're here to be on the show, it's unbelievable the reaction I get from some people. Like you are, man, you've got some fans, people who will die by your name. They love you. You are a huge inspiration to a ton of people. And that has become really apparent since I've been, mentioning your name to people. So,
well, that's good to hear that there's still some fans out there.
They're here. I mean, maybe they're just here at my shop, but there's a few here for sure. But that kind of gets me to where I want to start maybe is just, I think it's super interesting when people end up doing something they're super passionate about and they actually love with all their heart, and then can even evolve that into a career, and in your case, a career and a business. And I want to hear about that. I love that story. How do you end up where you're at? It's very unique. Not many people do.
Well, where would you like me to start?
Well, you came out of mama's vagina.
Okay,
I mean,
that
you
far,
could give us
that
some...
far back. All right. I was born in Florida in 1974. And shortly after I was born, my father, he's a nuclear engineer or electrical engineer that took a job at a nuclear plant in Alabama. And my family moved to Alabama when I was 6 weeks old. So I pretty much grew up in Alabama, even though I was born in Florida. So, I spent my early years in Alabama. We had some land, had chickens and a pig and some goats, and the woods were my playground, and I loved it. It was an amazing place to grow up. I had freedom and woods as far as it could go, and grew up, kind of hunting a little bit, and it was really cool childhood. And then around fourth grade, my father got transferred to Atlanta for a year. And when we moved to Atlanta, I found my sister's banana board, like a fiberglass. This is in 1984, and the board was probably from around 74, but it just had kind of stayed in the family and was in the attic or whatever. And I was like, I didn't even know what to call it. I didn't even know what it was called because I was moving from the sticks, And my sister, my eldest sister, I'm the youngest of four. She told me it was a skateboard, and she showed me how to tic-tac and walk the dog and how to push. And my mind was blown. I was like, I've never even seen this. I don't know what it is. Don't know how it works. And I just remember being so hyped on it, and just, it brought me so much joy to try and learn. So she left, I'm just there with a fiberglass banana board. She's gone, and I'm trying to remember how to do what she just showed me. She broke it out like nothing. So this was something that she probably did in the 80s, just kind of around the neighborhood. But she had her moves anyway. And so I was learning tic-tacs and how to walk the dog and how to push. And, Atlanta's a pretty hilly place. So I rode down, our steep driveway with my mom's isotoner gloves, burned holes in the gloves. And, anyway, I was just really into it, but I was also into BMX. I just discovered rock and roll around that time. Van Halen 1984 album just came out. That was a bit of a mind melter for me. And, there was a full rock and roll scene happening in Atlanta. We all had buttons on our jackets, Def Leppard, Pyromania and Quiet Riot, and all the things that were coming out in the mid 80s. So it was a cool time. Anyway, fast forward, father moves back after this year in Atlanta. We moved back to the country in Alabama for the summer. only to find out that my father's received a job in South Florida. So now we're moving to South Florida. It's 85, 86, and skateboarding is just on the rise. It's a big boom. Bones Brigade, Tony Hawk, Powell Peralta was exploding, and everyone was skating at my elementary school, and I was just like, already excited about skating, but then I was like, whoa, everyone's skating. Like, everyone's got these really wide boards. I was seeing real skateboards for the first time. Not real, but, like modern skateboards. Anyway, so I got a skateboard, started skating to school in elementary school, started skating around the neighborhood, and this is fifth and sixth grade. Got pretty into it. Then started kind of getting introduced to the music of skateboarding, punk rock music. By seventh grade, I'm fully in Dead Kennedys, Black Flag, like, pretty, having a tough time like any kid trying to adjust in those years, and punk rock music and skateboarding really just spoke to me. So then again, after 2.5 years, father gets transferred back to Alabama, and it was brutal. We moved back to Alabama, and it was like a country town, but after I'd been exposed to all this stuff. So it was a really hard transition going back to, a conservative junior high school where all the kids, there was no uniform, but all the kids dressed, with plaid shirts, and they all tucked in their shirts into their like khaki pants, and they had like boat shoes on. And that was what was happening in the 80s in Alabama. And I was like long blonde bangs and like big baggy shorts. Like I just looked like I was out of, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or something. It was seriously culture shock. So I had a really tough time for a year or two trying to transition. And then eventually I found my crew of skateboarders in our small town. They were all across town, and we were all just linking up on the weekends and building, jump ramps and meeting in parking lots and building like mini ramps and trying to figure out how to build a vert ramp. And we didn't really have a lot of videos at that time, so we were kind of just winging it. It was like blind leading the blind. It was like whoever was the best in town was showing everybody else how to do it. Right. Or if someone moved in from out of town and they'd seen something elsewhere, they were telling us about it, And there was a couple of issues at Thrasher getting passed around, so we would have bits and pieces of information that we would try and emulate. And then videos came in the late 80s, like 89, 90, 89, probably 88. We started seeing like all the Powell videos and started understanding what was really going on. And that really helped the progression. But yeah, that was kind of the start of introduction to skateboarding for me. That was like the 10-minute elevator version.
No, that's cool. Gosh, our lives mirror. I'm small town Iowa. Nobody's riding skateboards. My dad in the 4th grade moves us to Boulder City, Nevada, right outside of Las Vegas. And boom, there's kids riding around on these Powell Peralta decks. I remember that first Christmas I asked for my first skateboard, and I got what was the one? Powell Peralta with the sword and the skull. The sword and skull.
Yeah, that's what it is. Sword and skull.
Sword and skull.
Yeah.
And but my mom got me the purple one, and I was so bummed. Why'd she pick the purple one, man?
Dude, I like purple.
I didn't bitch. You had purple rail guards on.
Oh, I see.
Like, Mom,
I see.
Purple? Come
Yeah.
on, black. Give me something black.
Yeah.
Anyways, and so those same things were happening same time. Same transition too. Moving at the same moment, moving from rock and roll music to Dead Kennedys and all the punk movement and the skate movement. And the same way we were learning the same way. That some kid would move into town from San Diego or LA, and he'd be the guy to be like showing us what was going on, because we didn't know. There was no Instagram. There was no way to know what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
Now, of course, my life starts veering off towards art. Yours doesn't veer off, though. It continues down this road.
Yeah, I mean, once I found, people say you find your tribe, but once I'd found the other skateboarders and we were really pushing each other, and around this time, 15, I got a motorcycle and I started traveling. When you're 15 in Alabama, you can get a motorcycle license. So I had a motorcycle and I was traveling to the small towns around our area, and with that, just 30 minutes this way, 30 minutes that way, I was able to connect with everyone who skated in the area. And those guys, they all had different influence. Each guy had a different video, and we could all watch those videos. And we were all progressing together and pushing each other. And, we started making zines around this time and making our own videos too. And they were all pretty ghetto, but it was still like we were trying to emulate what we were seeing. And this just really pushed skating. And I'd realized that I had such a passion for skating, and I had an obsessiveness to my personality. So when I really like leaned into something, I really went in. I just was completely obsessed about it. Like in art class, I'm only drawing skate stuff. And then everything I'm doing, I'm just trying to figure out how I can skate more, how I can get better, how I can progress, how I can push myself. And then once I started filming videos and I could watch myself, I started working on my style and kind of working on tricks, and just had a real thirst for progression, and I wanted to evolve. But I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that my dad didn't understand skateboarding, and he didn't really give much attention or validation, because it was almost like I was wasting my time. And so then I leaned into my peers to try and impress my peers and try and, and skateboarding was something where if I spent enough time doing it and I focused enough on it and I pushed myself past my fears, then I could get attention for it. And once I started getting that attention, I got really almost addicted to that validation. And then that became the driving force, and that was the drive. It went to the subconscious, it went to the background, and I was just thirsty for progression. And because it meant a lot of things. I felt good about myself. I love learning new tricks. I love the feeling of rolling away from something I've been working on for days or weeks. But then I also love the feedback that I would get from my peers. At a pretty young age, and getting pretty disciplined about it. And traveling all around the Southeast and trying to go to contests and link up with other people and skate with people that were better than me. And then I started dreaming of California. I mean, that's
the Mecca.
Yeah, I was I knew I couldn't have a skateboard career in Alabama. At this point, there'd never been a pro skateboarder from Alabama. So it was
So you had your eyes fixed on going pro.
I just had my eyes fixed on skating as much as possible, and I knew I didn't like school, and I didn't really know what else I wanted to do with my life. So it was kind of like a process of elimination of how can I make a life in skateboarding so I don't have to
do all that
stuff. Yeah. And that was really, it was kind of like a process of deduction. I just love skating. How can I make a life in that? I mean, I don't think I would have cared if I worked in the warehouse at this point or any role in a skateboard company or in skateboarding. But I think that if, you were to ask me back then, having my name on a skateboard and just skateboarding for a living would have been the best case scenario. I just didn't know if that was possible. I couldn't conceptualize that. So when I was dreaming of California, it was just getting there and being around it. I wasn't I'm going pro by this date. I was just let me just get there. Let me just get out of this place, because Alabama, Friday night, you're out skating in the local grocery store parking lot, and there's rednecks with trucks pulling up and yelling at you, throwing bottles, doing donuts. If you have a ramp, they're trying to run over your ramp. It was out of a movie. You'd imagine it's a hick town, drinking, football, and bonfires. That's the thing to do, and then they're going to get booze at the grocery store, and we're just radsters is what they called us.
I never heard that term.
Yeah, I had never heard it either, but the rednecks and the jocks in my town had coined the phrase radster.
Oh, I can't wait to use that.
What's up, you dumb radster? Yeah, but heard a lot of that, and got picked on in high school and stuff, but I had a group of metalheads and stuff, and as I kind of got a little older, I got a little more confident and didn't get picked on as much, but it was pretty rough being such a minority. But it did help me identify with all the other races of people, that came from other places and moved to this small conservative town, because like them, I wasn't a minority in skin color or in race, but I was a minority in what I chose to take on as my identity. And so I was able to, identify with racism at a young age and identify the feeling of, being hated for, this wasn't what I was born into, but what I chose to do. So I feel like it softened my heart in some ways for others and gave me the ability to be empathetic for, different classes of people and different types of people. And, and there was movies for that, thankfully, Suburbia and other movies from the 80s and early 90s that kind of helped outline that. Even Repo Man and all the movies that I felt like were cult classics that came out in that time period that had punk rock music in it or spoke to that generation. I watched those a lot. And yeah.
No, everything you're saying just mirrors my own story. Weird. But again, mine went tattoo and yours went skateboarder. But so now you got your sights on California. How do you get there?
Well, I quit school.
What do you mean you quit school? You were in high school?
I was in high school. Yeah, I was in high school. 17.
You dropped out?
Yeah, I was 17. And I got into some situation at school that was looking like I was going to get my second suspension in the year, and I was going to have to repeat 11th grade. And I was already trying to get to California as soon as possible. So repeating 11th grade and then having another year, 2 years in Alabama, I was like, I'm not up for it. So I convinced my mom to sign me out of school. And I don't even remember talking to my dad about this, but I think that the agreement was I was going to go to this kind of like adult ed type school where, you get your GED or whatever, you do night school. Anyway, I kept that fantasy going for a while that I was going to start night school any time now. And he's like, when are you starting school? And I was just traveling. I was like, any friend that I had that was old enough to drive, I was linking up with him and we were leaving town all the time, like weekday, weekend. Once I got out of school, it was like on. I was so motivated and I was pumped. I was skating around the clock. It was amazing. It was like the never ending summer, endless summer. Anyway, so my dad would corner me every once in a while and I'd be like, oh, the semester doesn't start until like November or something. I'd come up with some excuse. And then eventually he's like, hey, well, listen, you're either going to go to school or get a job. So I was like, all right. At the time, I was big into burgers. So I was eating at Burger King a couple times a day and I knew everybody that worked there. So I went to Burger King and was like, hey, I want to work here. And they're like, what, really? So I got a job at Burger King. I was on the Whopper assembly line. And I started saving money for a car. First, I was saving money for a car.
Step one.
Yeah, step one, get the wheels to get to California. So I saved money for a car at Burger King. I worked double shifts. I was super motivated. Came in the morning, did, help make biscuits and breakfast. And then I would go home for a couple hour nap. And then I would come back in the afternoon and then I would skate all through the night. Or late into the night and then try and get up, and I'd kind of alternated that shift every other day. So I would have morning shift every other day. And then now I had a car. I was all over the Southeast and I was still holding down the job at Burger King, but just barely. And there was a 411 show. I don't know if you know that band, Dan O'Mahony, Mario Rubalcaba. They had a band called 411 in the early 90s. Anyways, kind of a skate rock band. Told my manager 2 weeks notice, a full responsible thing, which I can't believe I did. She's like, we'll see. And I was like, well, I really am going to go to this show. It was like,
you'll see.
Yeah, it was like one of my favorite bands. Anyway, it was lunchtime and I was like, hey, I'm supposed to take off. Now's my time to clock out. She's like, so-and-so didn't come in. We really need you. I'm sorry you can't go. And I was like, ew. Sat there and watched the the Whopper thing pile up on lunch. It was like 10 orders in the queue. And I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. I just left. And then she was just yelling at me as I walked out. And that was it. I retired from the fast food business, got in my car with my friends. We went to Atlanta that night, had an amazing show. I stayed in Atlanta for the weekend. And then I moved to Atlanta like a week or two later. I met some guys at that show and they were like, oh, you should come and stay with us. Anyway, I moved to Atlanta for the summer, saved up money, met a couple friends, or I knew a couple buddies that also wanted to go to California. We saved up money and we went to California that summer. Wow. So 17 in the new land with a couple $100 in my pocket. We arrived, we had $150 each. And
where did you arrive? Where?
We came to San Diego first, stayed with a friend of mine that lived in El Cajon for a couple days. And then we drove up to San Francisco, and obviously $150 isn't enough to get a place. So there was a skateboard plaza at the time called Embarcadero or Justin Herman Plaza, and at the end of Market Street in San Francisco. Okay. That was the place to be. It was in all the videos. It was like the coolest spot in skateboarding, even though the spot was really hard to skate. It's kind of like a surf break that is really difficult to surf and it has a gnarly reef, but everyone loves it. Anyway, so we went there and our plan was just to camp out there until we figured something out. There was 3 of us. We had $150 each. We went and got a bank account, put $450 in the bank account. And then we're just like, we're going to sleep outside and we're going to panhandle. We're going to sell whatever we have until, and if we don't eat for a full 24 hours, we'll go take $20 out and we'll all treat ourselves to Carl's Jr. Wow. So we did that for a couple of months. One of the guys was like, hey guys, I'm not up for this. He went back. He's actually from New Hampshire. So he went back home to New Hampshire. And he's like, you guys can just keep my money. We still had, probably.
That's nice of him. Yeah,
I probably had $350 at this time. I think his family bought him a bus ticket home. Anyway, we stayed on the streets for about 4 months. And then a fellow skateboarder was like, what are you guys doing out here? And we're like, hey, we're just we're just skating, man, just seeing what comes, seeing what happens. And he's like, well, my parents pay for a studio apartment in the Tenderloin. You guys can sleep on my floor for $50 a month. We were like, yes. We both had $50 a month still left in our savings. So we moved in and we had a roof over our head and we could take showers. So I got a job after that and started working. And then I moved out, got my own place. And then I found a small sponsor and, and then I was kind of like off and running, trying to make something out of that. They turned me pro really early. No one really knew who I was. I'd done okay in some contests, some national contests, but I was still pretty unknown at the time. This is 93, 93, early 94. Turned pro, and then I got an opportunity to ride for a San Diego-based company that was a little more established, and they were right next to Transworld Skateboard magazine. So I moved down to San Diego, moved in with the owner of the company, rented a room from him, and I'd lived in San Francisco for a year and a half at that point. I was 18, almost 19 maybe. Moved to San Diego, actually lived in Bonsall for a while. The company that I rode for was right next to Transworld Skateboard magazine. So I would just hang out at Transworld. I met all these legendary photographers. I would see, pros coming in and out, and it was kind of wild. And then I got invited on a few sessions, and I just tried to give everything I had and apply myself in every way that I could. And they took some photos of me and they started popping up in the magazines. And then, one time I jumped from roof to roof from, and in Fallbrook at Fallbrook High School, and then like came into the magazine like a month later to say hello to everyone, and they handed me a magazine and I was on the cover.
Oh
yeah. And it was just like, it was just the craziest surreal experience to go from Alabama to the streets of San Francisco. And then like a year later, someone handed me a cover and I'm on a magazine and I'm on the cover of it. It was pretty wild, but that was like tasting blood. I was like, I am in. And then I just really started getting super focused and dedicated. And then that's when my career really started to evolve.
Damn. That's a great story. That story has all the elements I knew it would have. And it has all the elements I find with people that follow their dreams. And the biggest one being this firewall the universe has built into it, that it just won't give you great dreams don't come true unless you're willing to be all in. And you were. That whole story is all in. I mean, living on the streets for 4 months without a shower. I mean, and one guy bailed, right? So that's cool. I love that and I think it almost has to be that way. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it, right? You gotta suffer a little. I could go into my story for tattooing, but similar. I mean, gangsters and knives and guns and every reason in the world to just run and not do it. But love for tattooing and art was so strong that I just, at the time, felt like I was even risking my own life to be there.
Yeah.
But did it anyway. And then it seemed like they reached a point, like when you got on the cover of that magazine, I had similar things happen where I got a job at a reputable shop after a couple of years, and suddenly I was around famous tattoo artists. And then everything went up from there. But those first 2 years were like the universe was testing me. Like, you say you want to be this person, but we're not going to make it easy. Let's see if you bail. Let's see if you give up. And you didn't give up. And there you are on the cover of Transworld magazine, and you're just getting into the game. That must have been
Yeah, I feel like those first few years, like my character was being forged, and I was really, my resilience, I was finding out who I was and what I had to offer. And I remember being pretty lost and pretty confused and pretty, discouraged at times. And, and you can imagine too, just quickly to like paint a picture, like for some reason I had a perm. I permed my hair before I left Alabama, and I had this like curly mop, and I landed in San Francisco, and my tricks were like 6 months to a year behind because, I thought I was on trend in Alabama, but when I got to California, it was,
behind.
Yeah, I was behind, and I had, somewhat of a Southern accent, and I was a big fish in a small pond in Alabama. So I arrived with this arrogance and this cockiness that the locals just crapped on. It was just like, you're a joke. And they let me know that on a regular basis. So it was really difficult to kind of find my groove. Like where I grew up in Alabama, if you saw a guy at the mall with scuffs on his shoes, you guys were friends for life. It was like, he skates, I skate, that's it. That's all it needs to be. But now I'm at Embarcadero, and on a Saturday, there was 150 skateboarders there. And so it's kind of like, why should anyone get a pass? Why should anyone be let into our crew? And I wasn't going back to my home on Monday. I was just sleeping at the spot through the weekend and through the week. And it was kind of like no one really wanted me there, but I knew that going home wasn't really an option. I knew there was nothing for me in Alabama. My parents at this point had been doing well in their careers. My father's a nuclear engineer. My mother was an interior decorator. We had a really nice home and, upper middle class in our small town in Alabama. I knew I had a comfortable room in Alabama waiting for me, but it was like, I'd rather be homeless in San Francisco and be on this pursuit of my own. I don't know if you read that book, The Alchemist, but I'm like looking for my personal legend.
Good book.
Rather than being, in the comfort of, my home in Alabama. I knew that there wasn't anything there for me. And I remember getting off the street and getting to a warm shower where I could take a shower whenever I want. I could take 3 showers in a day. That became the biggest luxury. I'd never understood how big of a luxury being able to just, when you want, go take a shower, and being on the streets. Like, there was a Hyatt right next to the plaza, and on like the 30th floor, there was a bathroom that no one ever went into. And so we pretty much just took like a sink shower in that bathroom, because you could, get down in your boxers and no one ever goes in that bathroom. And you could, get a washcloth or old t-shirt and, clean yourself up. That's kind of what it was like for a while. It's kind of like that Will Smith Pursuit of Happiness movie. It's like that, but it's not forever. I knew I wouldn't be there forever.
Right.
And I knew that it was fine. It was kind of like a long skate camping trip.
Yeah, like some kids go out in the wilderness and learn how to, hike around and catch fish. This was your little Boy Scout trip to learn to be a pro skateboarder.
Totally. It was interesting to, for people to know who I was when I got there. Like, oh, wow, but I still felt like I had so much to prove, because I don't know, maybe I felt behind, or, maybe because I turned pro too early. I felt like I needed to prove myself that I had value and that I was worthy of being a professional skateboarder. And so I just really started putting in the work. And then I eventually got an opportunity to ride for Ed Templeton's Toy Machine, which is also in San Diego. He lives in Huntington Beach, but it's based in San Diego. And that was really like the foundation for the career that I've had from there. It was like, he's an amazing artist. He had a really cool and creative brand, and he needed someone to help him on the team side of things as well as work with video stuff. And I had a little bit of experience with both. So I got an opportunity to work with him and rebuild the Toy Machine team in 96 or 95. And then I made some videos for Toy Machine, and those were like the foundation for the rest of my career. Okay. That was like the cosign that I kind of needed.
You're fully vetted at this point.
Yeah, at that point, I'm like, I'm making my way with the cosign of a vet, and that really made a big difference. And my career started, really kind of taking off from there. And I'm in my early 20s. I turned 21 when I was filming that video. So I'm filming and directing the video and starring in the video, and that was a big project for me that kind of showed the skateboard world maybe what I had to contribute. And then I took that and just built on it and kind of tried to figure out what more I could do. It was kind of like my first Netflix series or something, right, you know what I mean? Like, it was like the thing that really, put my name out there into the world. Like, oh, he, filmed this, directed this, and starred in this. And
well, it separated you from just a great skater.
I guess.
That's one thing. Now you're a filmmaker.
Yeah. Right as we were finishing the filming for this video, I started dreaming up this little company idea, and it was just going to be a t-shirt company, because I was so invested in Toy Machine at the time. And then I, came up with this idea to make, it was called Zero Division, and it was a division of Toy Machine. It was a t-shirt company off of Toy Machine. Okay. The more I got into it, the more I realized that this was my future. And after, it was like 6 to 12 months after dreaming it up, I was like, this is what I got to do. I got to start my own brand. It needs to be a full skateboard brand, not just a t-shirt brand. And so we dropped Division and it became Zero. And then we started on Zero, and we started on our first video, which was Thrill of It All. We filmed it in 6 months. It was just like a promo video. And then we started on the next video, which was called Misled Youth. And that was similar to what Welcome to Hell was for Toy Machine for me. Misled Youth was the same for Zero. And we made a video in 99. And that was around the same time that Tony Hawk Pro Skater video game was coming out. So I got a call from Tony and asked me to be in the game. And I was a little bit hesitant, because at that point I was just so focused and dedicated to skateboarding that mainstream stuff was kind of like weird for me. X Games had already come around. It came out in 95. I went to an X Games and felt strange about it. I felt weird that skateboarding was being packaged in this weird like way to the world, and it didn't feel authentic to me. So I chose to not participate. So when I got invited in the Tony Hawk Pro Skater video game, I was kind of like, oh man, skateboarding's going to be in Walmart. It's going to be in like game stores and all this stuff. And at first I was kind of not really into it. And then I heard all my peers were in the game. And I was like, okay, if I don't do this, it's going to be detrimental to my career. So I was the last person to say yes. And man, am I thankful that I said yes.
I'll bet you are. That's interesting though, that what the picture you're painting right there, because what you're describing, this is the time when skateboarding is coming it's coming into the limelight. It's becoming mainstream. And as a person who grew up in the culture from the ground up, yeah, that would feel really unauthentic, like it was ruining things. But then at the same time, you realize this is unstoppable. It's going this way with or without me. And so it better be with me. Might as well be with me, right?
Yeah, I mean, I saw it pretty clearly that the names that were going to be in that video game were going to be the household names of skateboarding for the next few years. And I was either going to be in that list of names or not. And it was going to move on, and they were going to fill the 11th spot. Actually, I don't even think there was an 11th spot. I think maybe there was only 10 spots, but I said yes, and they'd already asked me. So I think I was in the last weekend, like the cutoff of it all, before the development of the game or before it was finished. And yeah, it became the
gold standard.
Yeah, it was. It really was. And, I was in the next 5 games, or the first 5 games. And then for my parents too, they have this like dropout kid that like took this crazy wild, followed his dream to California and lived on the streets. And my mom was worried sick, and my dad was just like, oh, he'll be back any day.
Mm-hmm. A great perk, right? You didn't plan on it. It wasn't part of your plan, but it was helping you out a lot, which gave you more, I'm assuming more financially and other ways, power to do things you wanted to do, which was continue to pursue your own ability to skate and to pursue your growth of your company.
All of it was like, lightning in a bottle. And I was able to get the financial means in order to start my own distribution company, to give Zero a platform in order to build a business. And that was all possible, because of that, largely because of the video game.
Takes money to make money, as they say. Well, that's awesome. So now what years are we talking right now? Where are we at in our timeline?
So 99 is when Misled Youth came out, as well as when the Tony Hawk Pro Skater came out.
Okay.
And I think it might have been at the end of 99. Yeah, it was Christmas 99, I think the video game came out. And then I started a distribution company in 2000, bought Zero 2000 and 2001 by making payments off of my partner, Todd Swank. And then 2001 to 2006, it was just full business mode. I was still filming video parts. I did another video part called Dying to Live, we made another video at Zero called Dying to Live in 2002. That was probably our biggest video to date and had the widest distribution. And then I started a footwear company in 2003 called Fallen, started another brand called Mystery. And I was in full business mode at this point. I'm working, 40 to 60 hour weeks in the business realm, like learning how to navigate, running a business and all aspects. And the success of my career and the other team riders that we have involved is enough to, make mistakes and still be okay because things are selling well. So kind of fumbled my way through business for the first few years and started kind of getting a rhythm. And I had some great people around me. Thankfully, I hired a great GM, a great accounting. Like we had a good team of people. And then business was booming in 5, 6, 7. Those were huge years, like further than my wildest dreams of imagining what type of success. But I started identifying with this success and feeling like, I started taking pride in these accomplishments. In 2006, I was voted Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young for San Diego. And that was cool. But I also, kind of started taking identity in this success. And I was obsessed with success and power and growth and progression. Mm-hmm. It kind of trickled. It went straight from my career, my skating career, into my business career. And my life is not very balanced at this time. My wife and I didn't even mention wife in this whole journey. And
somewhere in there you got a wife.
Yeah, in 95, I was traveling, coming back from a trip from Europe. Went to Chicago just to skate in the city on a weekend day, maybe a Friday or a Saturday. And we met some local skaters. They invited me and the other guys we're with to a house party, told us we could crash for a couple days. And then I went to this party, and I met my wife Joanne there, and neither of us were drinking at the time, and it didn't really reel back into this. But the reason a lot of my career was so possible is that when I was 15 or almost maybe 16 summer, I was partying at a friend's house, and I realized that if I continued on the path I was on of partying every weekend and like hanging out and just kind of not really being focused or dedicated to anything, that I was going to be there for the foreseeable future. In 20 years, I was still going to be in a house like that partying. So I was like smoking this cigarette in the garage, and I like looked at the cigarette and I imagined that this cigarette was my life burning. And so I stepped on the cigarette, put it out, quit smoking cigarettes, quit drinking, quit smoking weed.
Right then, at that
Right
moment.
then. Told my friends the next morning, hey guys, I'm done.
Wow.
I want to focus on skateboarding. I love it. I
And
feel
you're
like
15.
15. Yeah. Maybe 16.
That's
So
impressive.
I told them like, hey, this is my meal ticket out of here. And I really want to do it. They're like, oh yeah, if I had $1 for every time I quit drinking, I'd be a millionaire. I'm like, yeah, I can appreciate that, but I really got to do this. So around probably 15, 16 to 30, I didn't drink, smoke, or do anything. I was just focused on skateboarding. And so,
Well, and then that's got to be huge because of the scene you're in is heavily there's tons of drugs, alcohol, and partying in the skate scene. So it's kind of like the tattoo scene. Everywhere you go, everyone that's what they're. So for you to have made that, I just got to go back to that. That's such a powerful moment, like insight. It almost feels like heavenly, like intervention, or just for you to click and look at that cigarette the way you did and make that decision as a 15-year-old. That's rare. That is super rare. But I get what you're saying. If you hadn't made that decision, who knows? But it was certainly the right decision.
yeah, it was absolutely the right decision. And I can appreciate what you're saying. And I haven't really thought about it as divine intervention, but there was something very, very clear. I was completely by myself, sitting in a lawn chair in the middle of a garage. And I remembered thinking to myself, if I don't do something different, this is never going to change. I feel like that decision was probably the single best decision I made for my career. And it was really just to get singularly focused on knowing that I'm talented enough, but talent is not going to get me there. I need, my undivided attention needs to be focused on skateboarding. And I need to be able to channel every bit of who I am into this thing in order to make it all the way to California. And then when I get to California, make it through that. I knew that at some point, somehow I knew that was not going to be easy. I needed to be sharp in doing that. But I had other things I was masking and coping with, you know what I mean? I was basically desperate for validation, and that was the thing that drove me through a lot of this is that I wanted to be revered. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be known. I wanted to make something of myself. I wanted to have a legacy. I wanted all these things, but I didn't know how to do those things, but I knew that drinking and smoking and stuff. Now back to 95, I met my wife at this house party because we were the only two people that weren't drinking. So we started a conversation, and we were talking about, religion and life and travel and where you're from and how'd you get here. And she had just registered for college. She was from the Seattle, Tacoma area. And she had just, moved to Chicago that week for school. And so she was 17, and now at this point I'm 20. And we had an amazing conversation. I thought she was amazingly smart, super cute. And we kept in touch. I drove back to California. We kept in touch. She came and visited in December on holiday break. That's what she did with her break. She came to California and stayed with me for 2 weeks, and we got along amazing. And we started like properly dating. We went back and forth from Chicago to San Diego for the next 6 months. And then after her first year at college, she moved to San Diego. And at this point, my career was taking off. Welcome to Hell had just come out that summer. And I had a signature shoe on America that dropped, and now I had resources and funds, and I was able to, get a house in Encinitas. We moved to Encinitas. We got married in 97. So in February of this year, we celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's That's cool. No, the only two at the party, not drinking. There you go. Back to that decision you made at 15. That wouldn't have happened.
I know.
You wouldn't
I
have
know.
that wouldn't have probably worked out.
Totally. So,
But I didn't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, so in 2003, we had our first kid. His name is Julian. He's 19 now. So we had started a family right when the thick of when business was taking off. And that was kind of why I reeled back to, get back to catch up with my wife as a part of this picture. So she was there though for all of my obsessiveness through those video parts, through Welcome to Hell, through Misled Youth, through Dying to Live, all of that. She was there, witnessing me in my madness and also being very supportive through a lot of that because there's a lot of mania that goes with that, like obsessing over tricks, going back 5, 6, 7, 8 times, traveling constantly. It's a pretty gnarly, undertaking to be married to a pro athlete or a skateboarder or whatever. It's tough, especially one as obsessive as myself. And then to try and pile on my skateboarding career and then a video career and then also a business career. I was pretty consumed. A lot of the time I would be at dinner and just be completely processing and out to lunch thinking about this next project I had focused on. And I imagine that, I know it was really difficult for her.
Takes a special kind of woman. That's cool.
Yeah.
She got a good one.
I spend a lot of time in that place of gratitude now. But now I realize and I can acknowledge that those were choices that I made. And I realized that they came at a sacrifice. Mostly the sacrifice was to my wife and kids. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to, not trying. I'm really thankful that she has given me the runway to redeem myself and show up for her in a way that I couldn't in our previous years of our marriage. So we are, rebuilding our relationship and identifying, what works now. And I'm changing, I'm evolving into hopefully a much more emotionally mature version of myself where I'm not just thinking about me. I think that in the heyday of my career, whether it be skateboarding or business, I suffered from some level of narcissism and selfishness, to a pretty intense degree because I was so obsessed with what I was doing. And I felt like it defined me. And ultimately that all had to be at the highest level. And I was willing to sacrifice anything for that. Now I'm just not that. I'm just not willing to do that. I realize what really matters, as life slows down, as my career slows down, as business becomes, and it becomes more, it's business. It's not everything to me. In order to get to this place, I had a full meltdown identity crisis about 5 years ago. The business was huge in 2006, 7, 8, 9, started to become tough, with the economy and with some landscape changes in skateboarding. And then 10, 11, 12, 13 were brutal. And so I had never had a downtick in my career. It had been all up like a hockey stick, just radical growth. And then in those years, no matter what I did, no matter how much I worked, no matter what I tried to do, I couldn't stabilize the death spiral that our distribution was in. But the thing that I'd learned the most is that I'd been humbled and I'd been brought to my knees and I had to kind of start all over. And it was probably the best thing that ever could have happened to me. And all these deadlines and all these things and all these brands and all these things that I took identity in, they were crumbling all around me and I couldn't do anything to stop it. And eventually my relationship started to crumble as well because I was in denial and I couldn't accept what was really going on. And I had to get some help and I had to get some clarity around it all. And that has been some intense work. And that's really what I've been doing the last 5 years in order to be able to dedicate myself to the relationships that matter most and humble myself to accept the mistakes that I'd made in the past and to try and learn from them. So they're ultimately not things that I regret. They're things that I appreciate.
That's cool. What, let me ask you this, like what in this change, in this growth, in this realization, what are the tools? What is the most effective things you're doing or have done to help you through that, to recognize that, to become this better person? Specific things you're doing? Or
Yeah. It's a pretty intense regimen, but in the late 90s, I became a Christian. I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior because I knew that I had some internal demons that I was suppressing and that I was trying to navigate on my own. And I reconnected with my faith, and I was brought to my knees once again, not knowing how to navigate business, not knowing how to navigate my relationship with my wife, not knowing how to be a father to 3 teenagers with a stressed marriage. And then I started going to the church. I joined the men's group at my church, and I started getting mentorship in areas and categories of my life that were completely neglected. And so I started kind of filling in some of the gaps that I had growing up. You know, I grew up really fast and young. I was 17 on my own, on the streets of San Francisco. My father and I didn't really have a lot to talk about from 12 or 13 onward. I was like raised at ramps, or whatever, like by other skateboarders. So I had these big gaps and blind spots in adulthood and parenthood. I joined a 12-step group in order to try to make sense of some of the obsessions that had gotten a little bit too much for me. Wasn't so much substance, but I'd struggled with relationships and codependence and, quite a few issues that were plaguing me and holding me back. And a lot of it was, my perspective and my narrative. So I started getting into therapy, getting into a 12-step group, joining a men's group, and then starting to gain community in my church. And then I started praying, and I started surrendering on a daily basis. And I started thanking God for every positive thing in my life that I could think of on a daily basis. The roof over my head, the running water, the breath in my lungs, the relationships that I have, my health, and starting each day with gratitude, and then praying for people that I care about with whatever they're struggling with. Those 2 things alone started changing my perspective over 3 months, 6 months, a year. I started seeing life through a different lens, and then also dealing with my childhood pain and unpacking that pain, speaking to my father about it, speaking to my mother about it, and then reading the Bible and reading scripture. And I go to church with a notebook where I'm trying to learn how I can be a better person and help others. And really a lot of it comes down to in 12-step groups, and a lot of what I learned is start serving other people. Like start finding purpose in showing up for others rather than being so focused on myself. And the more I did that, whether it be my wife, whether it be my kids, whether it be my coworkers, whether it be men and men's groups or 12-step groups, the more I served and the more I showed up for other people, the more purpose I felt in my life. And then praying every morning in a series of gratitude and kind of steeping myself in gratitude, and then also thinking about other people and praying for them, it just started shifting my way of seeing the world. And it was kind of like I had my old glasses where I saw everything as I was a victim, I was in pain, and I had this amazing career and I'm super awesome for that, but then I ruined it and I suck. I took those glasses off gradually and had a new pair of glasses on where I'm seeing like, wow, everything is a blessing. The breath in my lungs is a blessing. This moment we're having is a blessing. Every connection. And if someone's open for getting deeper than the weather, the news and weather, then I would love to talk about something more meaningful in life and like why we're here. So now I've identified that my purpose is to connect and serve others. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
Dude, that's beautiful. And I had a question written down here, and and you just answered it, which is, this identity shift, that process of your identity, as you said, was I'm a pro skater, I'm a business, I'm an entrepreneur, and this was your entire identity. You were completely connected to it. So you were also connected to the whimsical behavior of those things. If those things were successful, you were okay. If they were not successful, you weren't okay. Realizing that I need to figure out how to be okay regardless of these external things, right? And how do I do that? And you explained it, and your faith in God and your commitment to Christianity. I think that's a great way to do that. I personally am a little more Eastern philosophical, but I mean, I have my way I've done it. It's the same way. It's the same path. I'm doing this, what you're saying. I just don't do it from the Christian format.
Yeah.
But I couldn't agree more. And that's a really beautiful story. And it's one that I think a lot of people will enjoy hearing, because there's just a lot of people out there in that place where you were 7 years ago going, what do I do? What's wrong? What's not working? Of service? Wow. You go up and I read books on these very wise people and these gurus and swamis and these religious figures, and what you find, the further you go up and the more peaceful they become and the more genuine they seem, they all end up being of service. That's the greatest joy there is.
It is
helping others.
Yeah.
Nothing will make you feel better inside than just looking around and being like, oh, I could help them, and what do they need? And that's and gratitude and not forgetting like the simplest things are really a gift.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to get up in the morning and find the 4 problems you have and focus on those problems. And meanwhile, you're walking right under a beautiful oak tree. You don't even look up at the fucking tree. You're just looking down at your phone like, fuck, this manager. There's the tree, there's the phone. Like, gratitude. That's killer, man.
I feel like all these things, I agree with what you're saying. And I feel like all the things that we're talking about is a practice. What that looks like for me is trying to connect with other people that I care for and appreciate. And that's kind of a phone list. I call people on drives, I text people, letting them know I'm thinking about them. But living in connection has been basically the mantra that I'm, kind of living by, and then identifying my relationship with my wife and my kids, and how do I live in connection with them? How do I practice that on a daily basis? And the more I practice it, the better I get at it. So I feel like it's just the process of evolution, but super thankful for the identity shift. And, I couldn't be more thankful for my wife for pointing a lot of these things out. She pointed it out for a long time, and I was in denial, and I wasn't really ready to change. But better late than never, I guess. And I'm very thankful for that. She gave me the runway to change. And now we're building a beautiful partnership, with dates and walks and just, amazing conversations about the future and, redemption and discussions about the past and hearing about things that were tough and being able to be there for each other. It's a beautiful thing.
That's killer. Yeah. You mentioned connection, and, it made me think of when you see people with addiction, they become more and more isolated. Mm-hmm. Isolation is where you go when addiction. Well, maybe isolation starts first, then the addiction. I don't know if the egg before the chicken or how that goes, but you're right. Healthy people that maybe are dealing with these issues have lots of friends, lots of family, that they maintain those relationships. They don't just go off somewhere and stay to themselves and don't talk to people. That's a huge one. I'm lucky because of this tattoo thing I do. I have this built-in connection to so many people. And being vulnerable with them and sharing, like, dude, I did that. I wouldn't do that. This is why. Not coming in with my mask on. Hi, I'm Aaron. I'm the smartest in the room. I know the right thing to do. You guys should all listen to me. That's not helping. It's not authentic. Authentic is, hi, I'm Aaron. I've made a million mistakes, and I regret this one and this one and this one. If I could do it over again, I would. I see you're moving in that direction. I would, and then admitting your faults and being vulnerable with other people is huge. Social media is plaguing us in this particular way because everyone has their best face on it.
Yeah, it's like a highlight reel.
It's a highlight reel, and we've not everyone. I mean, there are exceptions. Some people are very vulnerable on their social media, but the vast majority are just giving you the highlight reel. And like my teenage daughter, I can tell she's having trouble in certain ways because she feels like everyone's living this great life. Yeah. And I keep trying to explain that it's missing that authenticity, which is not helpful, especially for a developing teenage person.
Yeah, it's hard. It's almost like that is an alternate universe. Social media is not reality. It's an alternate reality. And it's very important to stay steeped in reality in the real sense, and that's hanging out with people and having, experiences, and I fell victim to that. I had to properly take a break from Instagram. I took about a 3 to 6 month hiatus, and then now I have had to move to 1 or 2 posts a month, and just really not play into letting, what other people think about me, dictate my self-worth.
That whole subject and how it's affecting the youth and my own kids in my own house, I don't have that one figured out either. I'm just doing the best I can, trying to talk to them about it, help them to understand, limiting as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the best thing we can do is limit the amount of time that you're in that world, because how long, or the longer they spend in there, the more normal that will be, and that'll be the way that their thoughts and their view of the world is.
Yeah. True. It's a little scary, but it is the world we're in. And I have some parents, usually their kids aren't as old as mine, and they're like, "Well, my kids are not going to use it. You let your kids use social media? My kids won't. I won't allow it when my kids get older." And maybe they won't, but I'm just sort of like, first of all, good luck, because all their friends are you're gonna make them a pariah. Like they might not have friends, or I don't know how it works, but if they didn't have that's how they communicate nowadays. So I don't want to take it away. I want them to incorporate it in a healthy way, a limited way, so that it's part of our culture. You can't, I don't know how you probably agree, like taking it away from these kids is probably not the answer either.
I mean, I think that introducing it as late as possible is ideal, because they have more time to determine who they are and what they're about, and not be so influenced by every little thing that comes across their screen. But at a certain point, you're fighting an uphill battle, and then the best thing you can do is limit and educate and try and talk about it, and be very open about it. But I just have to remind them that I'm paying for their phone, and if they don't text me back, then they don't get it. Then they play by the rules when they have to. But it is difficult.
Hello, friends. I just want to take a minute to thank you for all the love and support you've given us over here at Chats and Tats. If you love tattoos, and you love hearing from folks that are going to tell you about their deep personal tattoo journey, stories that I think reveal the beautiful nature of this art form, please give us a like, or even give us a follow here on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, leave us a comment. We would love to hear more from you, what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see more of, less of. Your comments mean the world to us. So with that being said, I want to thank you once again. And now back to the show. Well, look, I want to switch this conversation a little bit. It's Chats and Tats, and you're tattooed. You got a lot of tattoos, and we'll get into that. But I think earlier you had mentioned your first tattoo was a bit of a story. What was your first tattoo? When'd you get it? Why? What's the story?
I was 16. A friend of mine who was 18 and this is in Alabama. He's like, "Hey, I'm going down to Fort Walton Beach," which is like 2 hours away from our town in Alabama. "I'm going down to Fort Walton Beach to get my first tattoo." And he was getting, I don't know if you've ever seen that graphic. It's a skateboard graphic, Jim Thiebaud. It's a hanging Klansman hanging from a tree.
I have not.
It's pretty iconic graphic because it's, a hanging Klansman. Anyway, we grew up in the South, and we were all anti-racist. So he was getting this hanging Klansman, which is a real meaningful and kind of gnarly tattoo, but it was pretty cool. And he's like, "Hey, I wanted to see if you wanted to go with me, and if you wanted a tattoo, I'm sure she'll tattoo you too." I'm like, "I'm only 16. You think that matters?" She's like, "Nah, it doesn't matter. She won't even care." Anyway, I remembered answering the phone and turning the music down in order to hear him. And then the knob of my music was an 8-ball sticker, and I'm like, "That's it. I'm getting an 8-ball." And so it was literally that spontaneous. He picks me up. I go and get an 8-ball tattoo. I have no idea why I'm getting an 8-ball tattoo. I don't love pool. I don't do coke. So I have no idea why I'm getting an 8-ball tattoo, but it's just an iconic logo. And there was a couple of skate brands like Stussy used it. And then this other company, New School and Skateboarding, used it, and Drawers. I go down, I get an 8-ball tattoo, right on my shoulder.
How big?
On the side of my arm. No, like a 50-cent piece, or maybe probably a 50-cent piece, or a silver dollar maybe. Right. Anyway, I get an 8-ball. I'm so stoked. I probably didn't wear a shirt for like a couple of months. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, "Why did I get an 8-ball?" And then about 6 months later, he's like, "Hey, I'm going to get tattooed again. Let me know if you want to roll with. I'm going back down to, I think her name was Carol. I'm going back down to get tattooed." And I was like, "All right, man. Yeah, I'll think of something." And then I was like, "You know what? I'm getting this 8-ball covered up." So my first tattoo, was an 8-ball. My second tattoo was the cover up of the 8-ball.
The funny thing is, we've used in tattooing 8-balls to cover things up. That's one of the most popular go-tos.
Oh, I could see that.
Oh yeah, because all the black. Yeah, just get an 8-ball. We can cover up almost anything with an 8-ball. But you're covering an 8-ball up. What'd you cover it with? It's so much black.
I know, but I covered it with this is early 90s, so I covered it with a kind of a tribal sun type thing.
So you turn that to the black, and then the rays coming off
exactly,
of it.
The rays came off of it. And, the 8-ball has the little shiny thing on it.
Right.
The shiny thing I left on the sun, which is funny that there's a sun with a little shiny glimmer, a glare
The
on
eight
it.
ball still lives.
But then as the sun faded over time, you can like see the 8-ball still in the sun now. Now it's a collab. It's an 8-ball sun, not to be confused with a black hole sun. Anyway, and I've gotten a little bits and pieces of the sun covered as I've gotten tattoos around it. But yeah, that was my first tattoo, 8-ball, second tattoo cover up. So I was already acknowledging that I wasn't capable of making a good choice. The second choice wasn't much better, but it was definitely better than the first.
So yeah, you had a quick wake up. Most people don't get into their cover ups till they have like 50 tattoos. Then they do the tracing back and they start going through that process of what the fuck did I get that for? I don't like it anymore. And they're doing first tattoo covered up right away.
Yeah, I think I was spontaneous, but then also obsessive. So I was spontaneous with the 8-ball tattoo and then obsessing over it and feeling just how much sense it didn't make. And, it's funny. Well, we're talking about that now. And you mentioned it earlier. Like I've gotten laser removal because I continued with that spontaneity, through my 20s and covered some really prime real estate with just really quick ideas. And I really loved getting tattoos. I love the whole, permanence of it. And it's funny, it's permanent until I'm getting it lasered. But I love the idea of just committing to something. It felt like skateboarding to me. Like when you're trying a really, like a gnarly rail or you're jumping a big gap that you're scared of or that you're, that I'm tripping on, and then committing is such a, I don't know, it has such a cool feeling. And I remember that tattoos kind of mirrored that feeling of commitment. And even if it's a bad idea, you're still committed to it, and for better or worse. And I liked that about tattoos. I had praying hands on my forearm, and everyone, tons of people in California, it's like one of the, staples of California black and gray tattoos is praying hands. And I thought to myself like, it's cool, but I got the praying hands lasered. That was one of the first things I got lasered because I had the vision of having a portrait of my mom on my forearm. And so it wasn't like I hated the praying hands and now I'm over it, or now I'm like regretting it. It was just like I envisioned something different for that space, and I'm not above accepting that I just rushed in and filled up some prime real estate with quick ideas. I'm completely accepting of that. A lot of people are super anti-laser. I put a few of my laser treatments on my Instagram, and for me, it's being vulnerable. For me, it's saying these aren't mistakes. They're just choices that I'm no longer feeling that I need to stand behind. So these tattoos were cool. They served their time. They served their purpose. I enjoyed them, but now I want something else. Anyway, it's just evolution of self, I think. And yeah.
And I mean, hey, and it's funny you say the pushback that you might have received on social media for lasering your tattoos, and yeah, there are certain people out there that really get offended by that, like, and have an opinion about that. And it's really interesting because it's your body.
Yeah, I know.
Do where the hell you want. What do you care what I'm doing with my arm? But there are people who have a major opinion about it. I lasered off. I'm still lasering off the first tattoo I ever did on my leg. I was being taught to tattoo, and this crazy biker dude who was teaching me walked in the shop one day and he said, "You're going to do your first tattoo?" I thought I was going to tattoo somebody. He's like, "No, you dumbass, you're going to do it on yourself." And I got to go, so hurry the fuck up, And it was like, I just found this picture in a magazine and traced it and changed it a little bit. And I don't know, just put that on my leg. And I'm not lasering it because I don't like it. I just want to get something bigger and radder in that particular area.
Yeah.
And my tattoo buddies are just like, "Bro, you can't laser off your first tattoo." And I'm more like you. I'm like, "Yeah, I can." I see the body as it's all ashes to ashes, man.
Yeah.
So whatever. It's just like, I can put a bumper sticker on my car. I can take it off, put a different bumper sticker. It's just a car. That's how I look at the body. I love my body. I'm grateful to have it, and it works really, really good still. But I also realize where it's going. So there's that. So in the meantime, do what you want. What makes you happy?
Yeah, I feel the same. And I realize that people take identity in the permanence of tattoos, and they feel that there's this way you have to navigate, tattoos. It's kind of like you're betraying why you get it if you take it off. Mm-hmm. But that's their relationship with tattoos. That doesn't have to be my relationship with tattoos. Yep. I just feel like I I want to be open to change, and I want to grow, and I want to continue evolving. So
Sort of in alignment with what you're doing in your spiritual life, your emotional life, your relationship life. The
Yeah.
tattoos are reflecting that. You're like making changes, making your body reflect more of who you are now and what you want to be now. I think it's great. I've lasered a ton of stuff. I will probably laser more and I get new stuff on top. And I think it's great. It's great you're doing it, getting what you want to have on your body.
And I feel like the pain that we get with laser is a reminder of consequence in life, that if you make decisions, and they're not thought through or they're not planned out, there may be some pain involved. And I feel like that is par for the course. So, I mean, that's not to say that I love the pain when I come to get lasered. It's terrible. But at the same time, I appreciate that it's a part of the process.
And there's something poetic about it.
Yeah. And I think it's just, I don't want to say penance, but it's just something that's it's just real. It just makes it that much more real.
It reflects real life. Like
Yeah.
you said, that's how life works. It's
Yeah.
how this universe works. If you're going to be spontaneous and crazy and just quick decision, there might be a price associated. You know what? I'm going to choose not to brush my teeth for a year. Well, it might hurt when they have to drill them out of your head.
Yeah.
Well, right on. So on that note, we might do a tattoo today.
Yeah. Sounds like
we're going to see how this goes. Jamie kind of got thrown into the fire on this one. I was just like, yeah, it's Chats and Tatts. Come on down. Bring a tattoo idea. He's busy. He forgot about it a little bit or didn't have time to get to it. So like 2 days ago, I'm like, hey, bro, what are we tattooing? And he's like, And then you went through, he decided to maybe dig through some old drawings that his children had done over the years to get that. So he's brought a few drawings from his kids. We don't know how this is going to work. I'm going to take a look at these things. We're together going to see if we can just make a collage with them. And it might not work. We might not tattoo today, but I think it's time that we move on and mess with it and see what we can make happen.
I always thought it would be cool to get my kids' art, from when they're little kids, and you see how precious it is that they're drawing. And if each one of them had a style or something that they drew or something that reminded you of them. So that was my thinking, was eventually I wanted to get one from each kid. And so today I went through some bins of some of their old art. My kids are teenagers now, 14, 16, 19. And I went through some of their art as kids and just tried to find a few things that I thought were cool and that I remembered thinking that were, iconic for their style and what they were doing at the time. And so, yeah, being thankful for them and just being reminded of, how cool it was to be a dad when, these young kids, and to see their artistic abilities come out too. They might not even be that excited about it because they're teenagers and I'm getting their kid drawings, but at some point, hopefully they'll appreciate that I appreciate them.
Usually kids appreciate their parents after they have kids.
Yeah, I could see that.
All right. Well, cool. Well, let's cut it for now. We'll see you guys potentially on the other side of the room. Maybe we'll rip a couple tats or a tattoo, and then we'll talk after that. All right. Which one?
A little king. What do you call it? I mean, it's really a queen, but it looks like a king, so. Take a look, buddy. Nailed it.
Everybody, so there you have it. The tattoos, as you saw, they weren't really that demanding. But they're for his kids, they're for his family. They got that meaning in there. And I'm just stoked that we did them together, buddy. And I'm just, I want to say thank you for coming down. Let me do a tattoo on you, sharing your very inspiring life story, the journey you're on, the work you're doing now to better yourself, not stopping, not getting in a rut. We're in here tattooing, and I have a tattoo artist that works with me here, Hernan Carrera, very amazing Japanese tattooer from Argentina, is a super fan of Jamie, and he came in here and said, hey, can I get your signature? Thinking like I would tattoo his signature. And I'm like, he tattoos. And Hernan's like, he tattoos? I'm like, yeah, Jamie's a tattoo artist too. And then Jamie said, I'll tattoo you. So we're gonna go from here, and we're gonna set him up. And Jamie's now gonna rip a tat on Hernan.
I wouldn't say I'm a tattoo artist, but I do tattoos.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll take that.
Yeah,
We'll take
I'm gonna do a zero skull on Hernan, and we'll see how that goes. I haven't tattooed in about a year, but we'll give it a shot.
I'm sure it'll go fine. So, hey man, thank you.
Thank you.
Great
man.
hanging
Thanks
out.
for the tattoos.
It
Thank
sounds
you
like
for
we'll do it
conversation.
again. You keep talking about other ideas, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
I'll dream up a piece that I think that was in your wheelhouse that represents your work, not the little baby bird and the kid drawing. But I appreciate you doing those. It's meaningful. So
Dude,
thank
oh,
you.
I don't want to ring these. Look at these. Look what he gave me today. I'm going to make you sign these. Look at these. Couple of his decks. You want to say anything about those?
They're just 2 new boards. This is by an artist from Detroit, Micah Ulrich, and this series just came out. And it's one of 3.
The Four Horsemen.
Yeah, the Four
of the
Horsemen
Apocalypse.
of the Apocalypse. And this is an artist from Italy. Muff is Hot on Instagram. He does these collages. They're amazing. So. So we're doing this skull right here next to the Skate Destroy. I'm in a good neighborhood.